Time is 4:06 p.m. Board members, we are present here at City Hall and remotely, along with members of the public. With the assistance of the Communications Department and the Information Technology Department, this meeting is live streamed on the Ethics Board website, and we are recording it for future reference. There is a delay with online communications, and we should all be patient. As always, we thank those members of the City of Tallahassee for their support. This time, please rise if you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance.
And they moved
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is roll call.
Right.
Mr. Floyd.
Thank you. Carlos Ray, Brian Smith, Ernie Payne.
Here.
Ruby Barr.
Present.
Kristen Coster.
Here.
Robin Blank.
Here.
And Patrick Kelly. Here. We have a forum.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, approval of minutes for our May 17th, 2022 meeting. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes? Are there any corrections or changes to the minutes? And I have a motion to approve. Ms. Costa moves.
Second.
Mr. Payne with the second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is public comment. For those attending the meeting online, please make sure your microphone is muted. Last week, we asked the public to make a request by email to ethics@talgov.com by 1 p.m. on the day of the meeting if they wish to speak online on agenda or non-agenda items. Those who have submitted their names will be given a chance to speak as scheduled. For those of you who are present wish to speak, please complete a request form, forward it to the ethics officer, Mr. Floyd. Do we have any public comments on agenda items?
Yes, we have one public comment from Mr. Peter Bussine.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Peter Butzine with the Citizens for Ethics Reform. First of all, I want to formally welcome Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly, our coalition was the group that put this petition initiative on the ballot back in 2014, which was passed by 67% of the voters and created this independent ethics board. And here with me today, members of that coalition include Ben Wilcox, Richard Herring, former chairperson of this body, is also a member of our group, as is Marilyn Wills and Catherine Baer. So we look forward to having you on the board. I wanted to say that last night I was able to find the campaign rebate form online, and I took advantage of it, and it worked out pretty well. As I say, I got a personal email from Dwight about 2 minutes after I sent the send button, and he said, got it, so we know that it works. I do have a couple of quick suggestions, however. It is difficult to find. If you know that this comes under the umbrella of the Independent Ethics Board, if you go to the Ethics Board portion of the website, it's right there, right on the top, very easy to find. But for those who don't know that this is a program of the Independent Ethics Board, indeed, I tried to Google it by doing, campaign rebate, Tallahassee campaign rebate, nothing. I tried several other keywords and none of them worked. And we've been interviewing the candidates for City Commission, and we interviewed one last night, and she indicated that she also couldn't find it. Well, after I found it, I sent it to her, and we'll send it to the other candidates. But I'm going to make some suggestions about a website that has 17 tips for how to make sure people can find your page on the website, and I'm going to give that to you.
Okay.
I would suggest you take a look at that. Mm-hmm. The other thing that has always been somewhat problematic is receipts. Of course, the charter amendment requires receipts, so we can't get around that. But yet, I would hope that we can agree that the process ought to be as easy as possible. And the question is, what qualifies as a legitimate receipt? And I was able to provide a receipt very easily because the candidate I supported uses Act Blue as its processing center. Or if somebody used Win Red, they also would automatically receive a receipt. But if you handed a check to a candidate, or if you have provide a contribution in some other way, candidates usually don't provide receipts unless you ask for them. And I would like to ask a question, I guess, or for your consideration. One would be, what constitutes a legitimate receipt? For instance, if I took a screenshot of my contribution that appears on the Leon County Supervisor's website for campaign finance contributions, would that provide a legitimate receipt? Or if I had a credit card statement that provided of course, the date, the amount of the contribution, but also the name of the recipient, would that also qualify as a receipt? And I would like to suggest that if the answer is no to either of those, that you might want to consider expanding the definition of receipt so that it's easier for people to take advantage of the program.
We've used canceled checks for receipts when they don't have one or they've misplaced one. And we have asked some of the candidates, do you have a record of it? We try not to be restrictive.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think we're all on the same page. I think we're all trying to do the same thing. And these aren't criticisms. They're ways, I know that we've been working with Dwight and with the whole board to make this process easier and more transparent for campaign contributors so that they can get their $25 rebates. So we're all on the same page here. These are just some suggestions that might improve that process. The website is listed there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Butsey.
The budget.
Any other public comment on agenda items today?
No, ma'am, that's the only one we have.
All right, let's move along. Next item on the agenda, Ethics Office Report, Subpart A, Summary Report.
Thank you. And, you
Before
have
we
the
go
memo.
on, I had a question. Hello?
Brian wants to speak, I think.
I apologize.
Oh,
Mr.
yes.
Smith, you're recognized.
Okay, how are you doing?
You need to unmute.
I don't think he is muted.
Yeah, he is muted. There.
Now.
All right, how are you all doing? About how
Us or
many?
him
It's
that
us.
says it's muted.
Justin, do you know why we can't hear him?
See on the far right? That means we're muted.
I'm sorry, you think you can't hear him?
No, that says recording.
No,
Below
he
it,
said below it. Justin.
Can you hear me?
our speaker.
Can you hear me?
Justin, are you
can hear
there?
him fine.
Can you hear me, Mr. Cole? Can anyone hear me?
So if he can't hear me, he'll come in
Can you hear me, Brian?
because he's monitoring.
It's not Xed out on here.
Yeah, I pushed.
I can,
Brian, can you hear me?
yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so you can hear me, but they can't.
That's green.
Okay.
That's us.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Smith, stand by.
Okay. Can you
Try
all hear
now,
me at
Brian.
this point? Hello?
Sorry, say again?
Looks like the volume's way down on that button that came up on the
I had a
screen.
feeling it was gonna be there. Okay, well,
Now you're taking it up.
can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you all. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes,
sir.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Can you believe an attorney figured that out?
Hey! I'm a punching for you.
The attorneys can do everything except practice medicine.
Totally right, thank you.
About how many receipts do you think a candidate has to deliver or tender to contributors? Or it's based on the particular race, or it's too hard to speculate?
What's his question?
Concerning the issue of receipts, is it possible that we can just have a uniform receipt that candidates can download?
Possibly. What we've done is ask them to give us a copy of their receipt so we'll know it's their receipt. Because one of the things we do have to guard against is fraud. So We have to have ballot receipt, but that is one way of addressing it. We can make that a consideration.
Oh, okay.
And John is looking at it, but
Yeah, I mean, the problem is the charter was written in a manner where it's so narrow. We're really not, I think it says we have to have a receipt from the campaign treasurer, something to that effect,
It
whereas
does.
I don't even think canceled checks would be.
We've done it with the check.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I mean-
yeah, and I heard you, but because actually, everything that Peter talked about, we considered and discussed previously. And like John says, it's just such a narrow scope. We tried to do the best we can with the way it's written now. And I believe it's written into the charter and not just
Yeah, that's the problem.
yeah, it's written into the charter, so it's not just, they can just go change an ordinance. That's a sizable change, and it's not gonna happen until maybe they review the charter as a whole. The mayor's made that clear, not just for us, but for everybody that wants to address the charter, that's gonna be a one-time review. So until that happens, we're stuck with that language.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Thank you. The report, well, essentially, we did a lot of training, and we'll talk about that with the agenda. Actually, everything that's on this report, we're going to talk about our meeting with the Inspector General's office. We'll talk about on the agenda, campaign contribution, we'll talk about on the agenda. And then we just had our regular duties with expenditures, handling ethics complaints as they arrive, and administrative duties. So I get to be an executive director 1 minute with administrative duties, and then the ethics officer with the investigative stuff and the training. And that's essentially, like I said, we'll get into the details of those when we get into the agenda. Is there any question? I won't go through the finances, but is there any question on the budget?
Issue report?
Month's issue report, I only have one to report. And it was an elderly person, I talked to her, and she was trying to get assistance with a fraud that took place. And I worked next door to a law enforcement officer, so I actually walked next door and asked her who he could talk to directly. I gave her that information and explained to her how to follow up from there. And that was it, so I'm recommending that we close this one.
So close.
Second. Mr. Kelly on the motion and Ms. Barr on the second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, 7A, annual ethics refreshing training course.
Okay. And these next three, at some point, I will ask you to approve or adopt these courses. And because these are your programs and your courses. And this first one is annual ethics refresher training course. This is an online course. I shared it with you all. I know some of you looked online and looked at it. It focused on the ethical standards, and all of these people have had training previously on the ethics code, so this was a true refresher for them. I also included the organizational value, and what I've learned from experience is that organizational values is a strong way to affect the culture of an organization if you truly promote the values and emphasize the values. And I'm happy to say that in addition to this, they have to review something called, the employees have to review something called, it's called a critical review, policy review, and they also emphasize these same organizational values in their review. For that review and for this course, they have to complete it in order to be considered for a cost of living increase. So this is tied to their cost of living increase, as well as being a requirement in the ordinance for all employees. So, and you saw there, I spent about 4,000 and some dollars. Probably, I'm thinking 999 of that was actual software that we use. I have to renew that every year. About 500 I spent on Adobe Stock. I paid some people to do voiceover, and I've been informed by an expert that I can now use a software for voiceovers. We found one that may work, so it might be cheaper next year. But to develop a course like this would cost at a minimum about $48,000 if we had gone through a company. So we saved ourselves a lot of money by doing it. I want to recognize the staff, and I would even suggest, on top of the recommendation that I'm going to give, that we send them, each of them, a letter to thank them for their participation in the development of this course. Evan Denise Hart, who is like the editor-in-chief, and she makes sure she's very skilled at training and very familiar with the organization, so she could help me make sure it's relevant. Her supervisor, Brian Smet, Ellen Blair, who's director of the Human Resources and Work Development, Tom Bronakowski, who filmed me doing my portion of the introduction, Allison Ferris, Reese Gold, who was kind enough to give the introduction to the course. You know, I personally believe that the leader of the organization should lead the way. And I've asked him the last 2 years to do that, and he has welcomed that and gave a very positive introduction. Angela Hendrith, who's the director over diversity and inclusion. Mary Knight is in diversity and inclusion. Officer Steve Britt with teams. Young man, that whole team is next door to me. I enjoyed that. Amy Tolman, who's here today, and she reviewed the whole course, particularly from, not just from a legal standpoint, but from a legal standpoint and just logistics and everything. So John, Lucy, I put Lucy to work, I put Ernie to work, and all of that feedback was good, and Robin Blank. So there's a list of people who actually put time into this course. It doesn't just, Dwight. It's my mechanics, but it's all the other people that help make it a good course. So I wanted to recognize them. So the staff recommends the board's adoption of the course, putting ethics first, with a retroactive date of June 7th, 2022, which is when they started taking the course. So moved.
Second.
Mr. Payne, the motion, Mr. Kelly seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, and
Sure.
you can send those letters. We definitely would like to recognize those folks that
Thank
did
you.
so much to make that happen.
Thank you.
And I will say that I think your 48 grand number is low. The price for obtaining a commercial training like that, I think it's low at 48, so thank you for the cost savings there as well.
Sure. 7B, Tallahassee Future Leaders Academy. This is a group of high school students who city employees do during the summer, gets them jobs and pays for their salary during the summer. And because they're employees, they're required to take the annual course themselves. And I was asked to do it in person. I worked with the staff of that program, and they helped me put together some realistic scenarios for that group of students. I have to say that I thoroughly enjoyed it. These were very, even though they allegedly come from, I forgot what they called it, promised communities, which probably is supposed to mean low-income communities. What I saw was some very, very talented, smart, engaged kids. And I very, very much enjoyed going through the class with them. When I was teaching ethics, I gave them a scenario of a supervisor asking an employee to do some work for them at home at a discounted rate. The employee felt pressure to do it. And we talked about whether that was a violation. And then one of the students said, well, what if the employee wanted to do it at a discounted rate? Then I said, well, then we look at intent. And then she said, well, how would you figure out intent? So they asked good questions. I had them go through a scenario on collaboration. I instructed them to create a name of a company, a car company, design their own car, and describe how it's going to run. Some of them ran on water. Some of them ran on air. Imagination was the limit. But they really got excited. I remember one group, they were scared they couldn't draw, so they tried to get one of the staff to draw for them, and I caught him and made him stop. And then I came back later, they discovered they could draw, and it really looked good. And they created an engineering department, a design department, etc. So when they got up and gave their presentation, they said, this is my engineering department. And I had one kid, he gave real specs and real science on cars and friction. And so we were all excited at their response to the training. And I'm told that the leadership followed up later on some of what they discussed. So I thought it was very successful. And what you have in your materials is a workbook that I created for them. The good thing about the workbook is that they thought there's stuff, once you get past my picture, they thought they had to fill in all the blanks, and they thought they had to turn it in to me. So one time I skipped something, and a young lady raised her hand and made me go back so she could put it in her notebook. So they were very studious. They took notes. It was fun, and I guess you can tell from my enthusiasm that was fun, and they enjoyed it. So I'm asking you to adopt the student workbook, again, as another work product of this board, effective June 1st, 2022. That's when I taught it.
So moved.
Second. Ms. Farr on the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay. 17, the same thing. There are a few staff people that I'd like to send a letter to thank them for their input into the course.
Item 7C, new employee ethics training.
Sure. Second. Okay, new employee ethics training is something that we do every month. It's required that new employees receive training every 180 days. This course is not new to you. This is what's the first course that you adopted. I have made revisions to it in part based on the revisions to the city ordinance. The changes that we requested that the city agreed to approve became effective in April. So I updated this course to comply with the changes in like misuse of position definition. It changed slightly. So I'm just asking the board to approve the revisions effective June 21, 2022.
So moved. Ms. Costa?
Second.
Any seconds? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Agenda item 8, campaign contribution refund program update.
Okay, and as Mr. Butson, I get it right, I'm sorry. Sometimes I say Butson. Mr. Butson alluded to, we recently created an online form, and they can upload their receipts online, so it's much more convenient now. We have, with his, I think we have something like 21. My goal was and is 100 for this year, so we're at 21 and pushing. My next step is to meet with, what's his name? Supervisor of Elections. Yeah, Mr. Early. My next step is to meet with him to see what he can put in the different packages, like the candidates package, the ballot thing that goes out. see where he can help us. The challenge one is making people aware of it. And the other challenge is communicating well why they should do it. One candidate called me and he was saying, a lot of people feel like they're just taking money if they do it. And, so they don't feel right about doing it. So, and part of the message there, he's probably not going to the people that this is intended for, because this is intended for people who normally wouldn't give, don't feel that their contribution would make a difference, et cetera. That's who it's really meant for most. So we'll just have to keep working at that in various ways, going to in the neighborhoods and whatever we have to do to try to just get the word out. I'm going to work hard on this over the next month while you all on vacation. We don't have to meet. I'm going to make this a priority. Otherwise, I'm going to breathe a little bit next month myself. And I don't have anything to recommend on this one. So any questions or comments on this one?
Agenda item 9, advisory opinion.
And this is going to be John, and as it says, city employees, anyone can ask for an advisory opinion as written in the policy. If it requires it, we may give an informal opinion if the person needs it before we can get to this board, and which is what we did in this case. But now we're bringing it to the board for a formal opinion and their approval. And what happens if we give them a formal opinion and you end up disagreeing, that's not an issue. You just can't hold the person we gave an informal opinion to something different, because we did the best we could in giving them what they needed at the time. That said,
Okay.
and John, today in the training, I took up too much of John's time, so I'm messing with him right now again.
Yeah, I noticed. Just some background. We had a 4-hour presentation this morning, and he told me on Thursday for the first time that I needed to do an 1.5-hour presentation this morning, and he left me 15 minutes. So I want to thank Dwight for that. I'm very appreciative.
That was a misunderstanding, but
Yes.
Likes that spotlight.
Yeah. So I was just clicking all my slides through and we were done in 15 minutes. So we received a inquiry from the coordinator for special projects with the City of Tallahassee Electric and Gas Utility. She, in the past, and again this year, was the point person for the city to work with Relay for Life, the American Cancer Society Relay for Life. I guess she works at the local businesses. They contribute goods and services that are then used on behalf of the city towards the event, this Relay for Life. So her question was, well, I think it was very open-ended. So we talked a little bit on the telephone, and I said I would put together an inquiry on the gifts provision and the misuse of public position. I found that she was not doing anything wrong. In particular, the City Commission did adopt our recommended changes to the misuse of position on April 20th. So even though I still think she would have been fined under the previous draft of the ordinance, but I did include the change as of 4/20, and the key term was a manner inconsistent with proper performance. And since this is something that she's always done, expected to do, I said that was fine. The gift, she essentially was not taking anything for her personal benefit. It was being taken on behalf of the city, even if she took possession of it. So not controversial, I don't think. But it seems like she was doing good work for the city. So I just asked for your affirmative vote. I guess we need a motion and a second and a vote.
I just have one question. I read through it and everything looks great. What are goods and services?
We can get into this detail. I mean, I think they're probably going to get.
yeah, it would probably be support, because Relay, they're going around the track, because they do this at FAMU, they do it a number of places, but they're going around the track. So it could be Gatorade, it could be fruits,
Could be tchotchkes,
Yeah.
you know, stuff like that,
Yeah.
so.
Raffles, they do incentives.
Yeah.
People volunteer like massages for people to rub their feet after they've been walking the course for long, or all kinds of things.
So it's just to support all the activity that goes. So it's going toward the nonprofit use and not to benefit anybody in particular.
Any other questions on the proposed opinion? Motion to approve.
So move.
Mr. Kelly on the motion.
Second.
Mr. Payne seconds. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I think that was.
An aye delayed.
That was an aye from Mr. Smith.
International delay.
Agenda item 10, whistleblower protection.
Before John starts, just to give give background, when we had the workshop, ethics workshop back in February, I believe it was, this is one of the things we talked about. There were some concerns, and we told the city commission that we would work with the Inspector General's office on this, and we've had a number of conversations. Most recent, I met with William Pace, one of the inspectors in the Inspector General's office. He shared with me all of their procedures and policies, which are based on statute. And so there'll be two recommendations. One is to approve for recommendation to the commission, city commission, what John is going to present. And the other one is to direct us to come back with policies and procedures in line with their policies and procedures so that it'll be consistent across the board, and that'll help take out any type of confusion.
Okay. So,
Might have
Could I ask a quick question about that? Just with your brief meeting before we get into this, did the policies and procedures that they have seem in line with what we're trying to accomplish, or is it gonna be so different?
no, I think we can do more. I think there's some strict, we may have to move a little faster than we have in the past, but, I mean, the whistleblower policies will have to supersede. So if we are supposed to do something in 15 days per their rule, well, then we'll have to do it in 15 days, so. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So, made amendments to 3 sections of the ordinance. Well, actually, I amended 2, created 1. 2-4, and this was just something that I was going through. When we proposed our changes and the board, the city commission adopted on 4/20, we had put a settlement of complaints and dismissals in the penalty provision. They created 2 new sections, expanding the ethics code by 2 sections. So we just create a cross-reference in the definition section to take it out to 2-19. But that's nothing really substantive, but I was opening up that section, so I figured I would do that there. Anyways, under the Tallahassee Independent Ethics Board on page 4, on lines 98 and 99, I just expanded to say will process complaints as described in sections 2-22 and 2-23 and 2-23. You can see down the page is the new section that authorizes us to accept whistleblower complaints. They are very limited. We're very limited in our scope, the way we've done this, and this is with our discussions with the Inspector General. Is he does not have any jurisdiction. His office does not have any jurisdiction over the mayor, mayor's aides, the city commissioners, the commissioner's aides, or himself and his office. So we simply expand and kind of fill in the gap and only cover those areas. So anything else that comes in under whistleblower will still go to the Inspector General's office. Only in those narrow circumstances would it come in our way. And we did essentially took a lot of the language from their ordinance and tried to do a little bit of a copy and a paste, so that way it was mirrored what they did. So if you look on page 4, then page 5, there's a republishing of his section, Inspector General's section. You can see they're both entitled whistleblower complaints. So we tried to mirror it as much as we could. And And then with his, we just, we mentioned that those 3 groups would be referred to our office. And I think one thing that'll probably be dealt more with in policy than will in ordinance is that we need to have some line of communication with the inspector general's office and in our office to make sure that some of the timelines don't slip past us. So, all right, so I think that was it. Be on the phone that want to do that? Anything else that I'm missing?
No, I think, yeah, I think the most important thing is that we're filling in the gap, so it's a natural thing to do. I think it's very appropriate because it basically umbrellas whole organization, and we're not crossing paths.
I have a question out of curiosity more than anything else. Is there a reason that these people fell through on the first whistleblower ordinance?
No, it's just that he doesn't have authority over city commission because he answers to them.
Oh, okay, so that was deliberately written that way.
Yeah, because he can't do anything that, he's not authorized to do anything when it comes to the city commission because that's his boss. So,
Yes, the Inspector General is also the city auditor, so he's one of the 4 appointed positions that serves at the pleasure of the board. So that's where the issue comes up.
Any other questions? I'll just say, I think you're in good company with this. There's a lot of this going on, the kind of gap filling with corporate entities. What if there's a complaint against the IG? What if there's a complaint against the ethics officer? How does that get resolved? So I think there's a lot of these types of revisions going on nationally. So I think you're in good company with that. You need an approval on this?
Yeah, we can vote that today? Yes.
yes. If you look at the recommendation, staff recommends that the board request the city commission approve rule language that gives authority for Tallahassee and the ethics board to operate as local officials to designate complaints concerning city officials, their assistants and aides, and inspector general's office as whistleblowers. In addition, staff recommends the board direct staff to draft policies and procedures for handling whistleblower complaints that are consistent with such procedures already established by the inspector general's office.
Having heard the recommendation, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Mr. Payne, seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen, for your work on that.
Madam Chair, with regard, actually, John brought up something that was important that we've heard more than once. And, we heard it today when we were doing training indirectly, but the board, when it comes to this board, the board doesn't really answer to anybody. And so, there's been some discussion and looking at policy, at least looking at administrative policies for addressing issues, be there any. If we have board members who are out of line, how do we deal with it? And John and I, he can elaborate if he wishes, but we'll talk about that a little bit.
I think we've had a number of city staff, some members of the commission say, who does the ethics board answer to? So really, I guess nobody, I guess. And I think that, we have, the charter has a process for appointment. There's nothing about any removal or impeachment. And not that we think that would ever be necessary, but we just thought that since people have said, wait a second, who's ultimately in charge? I think the board would be in charge, and I think there's nothing that would prohibit this board from policing itself, and I think that would be appropriate. So I think we talked about maybe during the summer break, you guys are enjoying your time at the beach, and Dwight's doing his courses. I'll do maybe something about some policies that we could put in place for ourselves. it has nothing to do with any particular member, somebody just, I think I know when the Inspector General met with us, we talked about, who does he answer to? He answers to the City Commission. That's why he can't investigate the City Commission. And they said, okay, well, who does the Ethics Board answer to? We said, well, that's a good question. So we probably need to figure out a way so there's checks and balances across the board.
Right. And policing ourselves is the best option because it maintains our independence, which is very important. So we were suggesting that, but if you want that to happen, you'll have to direct us to do that.
Do you do that in directives or?
Yes.
Okay. we can do.
Whenever you wish.
Do you have a sense of when the city commission might take up this draft ordinance?
No, and it won't be soon because they'll be going on vacation or stuff, so it won't be before sometime in the fall at the earliest.
And a follow-up to her question, because that was on my mind too, is I don't know if you even have a foot in the water on how they feel about this. Any sense of how they feel about us being the people who?
Not really. I think we've done everything we can do to address the concerns at the appointment level. So we'll have to see.
I think it's important to point out, anytime you're dealing with jurisdictional issues, sometimes it's a little territorial, and we've actually had some very good conversations with Dennis, Rob in his office, and everybody else, and it's been very cordial, and there's been no, and I've gone to say, hey, if you think we're asking for too much, you let me know. He says the same. So we've actually had very good conversations with him, and just been very blunt and honest, and said, let's just make this thing work. And if you guys are doing it, if you're doing 80% of it, and we can do 20 and make the trains run a little better on time, then that'd be great. If it's 85 and 15, that's fine too. Whatever you think. So we've actually had some really good conversations.
Hey, we're on directives, okay.
Yes.
I would like to see if, over the summer, if y'all have some time, some self-policing type of policies or something like that.
It's a motion?
If you all agree, you need to get agreement one way or the other.
Okay.
That's a motion, I second it.
I don't know if I can make a motion. Can I have a motion?
Entertain a motion, and so he would make a
I'll
motion.
take what she said and I'll put it in the form of a motion.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
You went on mute again.
Okay, anyone opposed?
You said we.
Thank you, gentlemen. I think that, again, in the spirit of gap filling and making sure that we're all accountable, I think that we get a long way with that. And we're doing them essentially at the same time. Say, listen, we're not picking on the city commissioner or your aides, we're picking on ourselves too.
Yeah.
We're trying to make sure that everyone has an avenue to be heard and to be held accountable.
And while you're doing that, I just wanted to mention, because we keep alluding to it, we had the elected officials and their aides are required to take annual training, 4-hour training via chapter 112.1341, I believe it is. And also 2-142B, it is, requires them to take annual training with other topics. So we attempted today to combine those topics. Amy Tolman, I told her I thought she hit a home run. And the reason I said that is because, public records and public laws, public meetings, all that can be very boring stuff. But she actually made it interesting. And there was a lot of discussion, and there could have been more discussion. My family's an entertainment family, and I'm always telling them, leave them wanting more. So I think that overall, we did a good job of leaving them wanting more. There was engagement throughout with the scenarios. and a lot of questions and answers that kind of, I think they're a little more at ease with us and what we do, understanding how we follow our procedures and what they can expect and what the fairness and where the fairness and objectivity lies. And what common sense is common sense and sound judgment is sound judgment and all that. And I thought I told John 30 minutes. He prepared for an hour and a half. And by the time we got to it, I didn't give him much time, so I apologize for that, John. But he was well prepared, and in that short amount of time, he still did a great job. So I appreciate them, because I do a lot of this work, and if I didn't have people helping me, I wouldn't make it. But I'm excited. You might be able to tell. I'm excited because now all of this is over. I can take a break too. So, but I just want to mention that.
I did not mean to, but I skipped over public comment on non-agenda items. Do we have any speakers on non-agenda items?
She didn't say anything.
Any other directives from the board?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Payne?
I had a question on item number 8. I apologize, I didn't jump in fast enough. The press release that you offered here, has that already gone out?
It went out. It didn't. And I'm going to talk to Allison to see if I did anything wrong in the way I sent it out, because nobody picked it up. But yes, I sent it to a news service. I sent it to television stations. I sent it to newspapers, including FSU's and FAMU's and NPR, and so I of course, a Democrat and on and on. So I guess it wasn't controversial enough.
Is it possible to do it multiple times, say before the primary, before the general, that sort of thing?
Yeah, it is. It is. And I'm going to get some advice before I do it. Again, and like I said, now I have time to really delve into it because I'm determined to get to 100. I don't like to lose, so I'm determined to get to 100 one way or the other. I'm not going to donate until I get to 100, but I'll do everything I can.
See, our next meeting is August. We will take July off. There's work being done. Any other items for the good of the order? We stand adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Well done.
Thank you.